Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast Live. Let's talk stocks. Joining me right now is Tim, and soon joining us will be Boomer as well. Boomer Dividends or Boomer Divvies. Tim, how are you doing this morning? It's been quite a while since you've been here on the Passive Income Podcast.
Doing good. California's getting nice and hot right now, so I'm inside in the nice cool air, but enjoying my coffee. Excited to sit down and talk to you. I just want to make sure I show everybody my amazing coffee mug that I am
Yeah, the
currently
Passive
enjoying.
Income Posse coffee mug.
Uh, yes, sir. So yeah, no, doing great. Excited to kind of hang out and chat and kind of roundtable it, and yeah,
Nice. Yeah,
yeah.
the weather's been was hot here all week as well, and then of course it started raining for the weekend because that's just the way it works.
It's raining really. I feel like we don't get in Southern California specifically. It's very temperate. We get dry heat, so it's not, it's not humid. But it was in like the mid 90s, I think 95, 96 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, Rather warm, but I mean
Yeah.
it was, and then the power went out three times,
Oh, so
which is
there goes
always
the AC.
exciting. I uh I do have a Tesla energy system, so my house was actually online last night
Oh,
during the
that's great.
outage. I have a really cool picture here. I'll show everybody of. It's hard to see, I think, on a phone, but so I have. Here, I'll kind of hold it up to the camera, but you can see my house.
Yeah.
Sorry, and then I know the screen's kind of there. You see
Yeah,
my
no, you
house,
can
and the
kind of
rest of the
see it's
street's
not too
dark.
bad.
Yeah, the rest of the screen's dark. So, or it's the street's dark. So, there's no better ad than actually seeing it actually happen. So, but hey,
Right. So you have like
that was
solar panels on your roof and then the
with the
Tesla power
batteries.
pack and
Yep.
all of that.
Sure do. Yep. And it saved the day. I was actually having my daughter's birthday yesterday, and had about 40 friends and family over. And if it wasn't for that, when it got dark, I think everybody would have left. So that
Right.
was kind of saved the day. Yeah. Yeah. No
Well, I guess
complaints.
that's a
But
great place to start then. Let's talk about Tesla.
sure. Yeah. I am a Tesla shareholder. I have a measly 10 shares, so I don't think like I'm any kind of, whale in the Tesla world or anything like that. I do tend to purchase either companies, specifically companies that I use in some way, shape, or form. I do have a Tesla Model Y. I do have the energy Tesla energy setup. So I believe in the product and the engineers that come up with this stuff, and they're really solid products. I mean, as I just showed you last night, the batteries saved the day. It really, um, man, if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have been a great birthday. So I can really appreciate it from that perspective alone, let alone saving me money. But it was really awesome. And then
Yeah.
my car, I mean, I think you say this every time you get into a new car, right? This is the best car I've ever owned, and it's certainly true of this car. But I tell you, the technology that comes in these things, it just blow your mind. They continually update it. Um, and it's just fun to drive. You get a big grin on your face when you drive this thing, and I love it. It's really 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 fun. So they make great products, and so of course when I saw the a dip down to like the 150s 160s, I started grabbing some shares, and um, all the way up to kind of 10. I figured a nice round number, and let it ride for a while. Again, I could see the future of self-drive. I can see the future of robotics and AI and power and all the little things that Tesla's in is so much more. People think of it as a car company, and it's so much more than that. Especially
Right.
again, just highlighted the fact that Tesla Energy saved the day yesterday. That has nothing to do with cars. I mean, yeah, they use batteries in their cars, but that was a home energy system. So it's so much more than that. And I mean, the stock is traded at a pretty high valuation, obviously, but I still think that there's room to the upside, especially if they can solve the self-drive. I know Elon is obviously normally very optimistic with his predictions.
Overly optimistic.
Yeah, it's putting it mildly. But if they can get close to it, I feel like there's a win there, and either way, it keeps me kind of engaged and involved in the company and the stock. And I actually listened to the shareholder meeting the other day. Wouldn't have normally done that, but I was interested in what he had to say and what the board had to say. And how the vote went. So it's kept me engaged, and it's kind of I've learned a lot. Since we first talked, I've learned a lot about trading, about companies, and paying attention to things that I normally wouldn't pay attention to, because at the end of the day, your money's on the line, right? So
Right.
it's important to pay attention to these things. And if you lose conviction, then dump it. It's done. Move on. Move that money into something that you do have conviction in. And so yeah.
I've got Boomer here backstage, but your camera's not on. Something's going on there. We'll bring him up and see if we can. Oh,
All
no, he
right.
exited to go out and try again.
Oh,
Yeah, I was going to bring that up about the Tesla shareholders meeting about a week and a half ago. And
yep.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Elon, and again, like we just said, optimistic to overly optimistic, that
Right.
he believes the company will be worth 10 times as much in. So what are they trading
Yeah.
at now? Right around 170, 180, somewhere in there. So 10 times
Yeah,
is
right in there. Yeah.
that's
Sure.
$1,700 share price.
They're at yeah, they split a couple times. They're trading at 180. They were down to where is it at? 140 back in April. So it hit the skids. Right now it's been trading pretty much sideways. It's kind of a small, very small range right now. So it's trading at a high valuation, and I think in order to really buy into Tesla, putting aside the hype and all that stuff, really it's about believing that they can do what they say they're going to do. Even if they can execute on that, I feel like the share price is, I mean, you're sure it'll go up, but I mean, it's still trading at a high valuation, right? So it's almost like in order to meet where it is now, they need to execute on everything they already said they would do. But yeah, so I feel like there's a little bit of room there. So, but I enjoy the products, and you find that a common theme in my portfolio is that it's a company that I use personally, professionally,
Right.
recreationally, stuff like that. Yeah.
Boomer, we still can't see you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me right now?
I
Yeah, we
can.
can hear you. We just can't see you. Where are
Yeah,
you?
it keeps coming up. It says device unexpectedly stopped. Restarted front camera. It just keeps trying to restart the front camera and just keeps
Oh
saying
man. Yeah, no, that goes.
device
Isn't
I think
stopped. It just
technology fun? I'm
I
not
think
sure I
I
can
think
help
my
you from
brain
here.
I think my brain needs that, Boomer. Sometimes it just has a critical malfunction. It needs to reboot.
yeah, it says make sure it's properly connected. Still doesn't work. Please contact our support. Whatever. It's never had a problem doing this before. And I
Huh.
No,
just
you've
went
been on
on my
here several
camera.
times on quite a few lives, and your
Yeah.
cameras are always worked.
And I just literally went to my camera to see if it was working, and it was working. So I don't know why this is happening. Maybe it
I'm
doesn't want me to
cursed.
break.
It's probably
Yeah, it
me.
doesn't want me to break the camera by having my
Uh,
face appear.
I love it.
That's not it at all. That's not at all. We're talking about Tesla. Tesla
Yeah,
solar panels and power pack saved the day for Tim yesterday.
did.
And then we just got talking a little bit about the Tesla share price and the shareholders meeting there a week or a week and a half ago. So, any
Mhm.
thoughts on Tesla?
I mean, I think ultimately, everyone says it's not a car company; it's a tech company. I mean,
Right.
ultimately, it's a car company, and most of its revenues come from its car company. And so, I think the non-car part of Tesla is a bit overhyped for now. When you're saying, so I didn't see it. Was there earnings report yesterday?
No, it
No,
was
they
the
didn't have
annual
earnings. It was
shareholders
just that
meeting.
shareholder
Oh,
meeting.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, like their
Yeah.
Powerwall. We looked at putting the Powerwall in at our house, but we put in a generator instead. We just did it
Sure.
6 months ago. And just because the Powerwall is good, except if you have an extended power outage, the Powerwall will also go out.
Right. Yeah, that's what happened. We were just talking. What you just missed, Boomer, is last night I was having a birthday for my daughter, and the power went out, and it's in the mid 90s here in Southern California. So the power, I have two power walls. They kicked on and saved the day, man. Like everybody would have bailed, like when it got dark.
Yeah.
But it kept everything going, including the air. And it got down to about 20% at about midnight. And then the power actually came back on. So it was out for
How many hours did you have of the
about
Powerwall?
about eight 8.5 hours of outage, and I had about 2 hours left, or about an hour and a half left at the end. So
Okay.
it was a decent amount of time. That was running the air, and of course, with 40 people in there using power everywhere, right? Not the normal power draw, but it saved the day. I mean, it's really interesting when you walk outside and you see a street, and I was showing it on video earlier. You see the street completely dark, and then your house has lights. This is kind of cool. But it's not the cheapest thing to do, as I'm sure you found out. You know,
Yeah, they're very pricey, but
they're
one thing
pricey.
is
Yeah,
that they're going to be quiet.
they are.
Versus the generator, like we got a Generac, so it's like the main
Right.
brand of generator, but
Right.
it's loud, and because it turns on about once a month, it turns on for 10 minutes on a little, I guess, just a cycle to run itself.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it's loud. So luckily, my neighbor on that side is like 90 something years old, so maybe it won't bother her. But the
Can't hear it anyway.
Powerwall's pretty cool looking too, though. Like they look
are.
good.
They're pretty. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give them that. And they're unfunctional, I guess, obviously. But one of the things that you kind of highlighted, been around the on the Tesla, the car side, that I feel like a lot of people don't have experience in if they haven't actually done it, is the self-driving. Now I know, like, it's kind of a hot button issue for some people. Feel like, I don't want to be anywhere near something that's driving itself, right? Don't feel safe, don't believe the technology, don't trust the technology. Or you see all these like disengagement videos where, like, holy hell, it tried to put me in a wall on the highway, right? I have an interesting perspective, I mean, driving one, right? And I'm curious of your guys' thoughts. So in the future, you know, I feel like in the next, maybe let's say 10, 20 years, right? I feel like this technology is going to keep evolving, and at some point it's going to be everywhere, right? Ford's going to have it, Mercedes, you know, Chevy, right? They all have it, in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like when you're engaging this technology, when you're out there driving, that the problems that you hear about or see are not often the actual technology itself, but the people around it that are driving. It's crazy, right? It's crazy to think like that it's driving at 70 miles an hour on the highway in its lane, sitting there, and somebody cuts you off, or somebody swerves around you or does something. That's not technology doing that. That's a human driver,
Right.
and it blows your mind. You're thinking like, is this safer than human driving? Because it has no bias, right? It has no anger. There's nothing. It has nothing. It's just technology. So it's something I've come to the realization in using this, like, slowly over the last, it's since October, since I've owned it. It hasn't been a long time, but I found it interesting coming to the realization that it's often safer as a driver than the people around it. And that just, like, it floored me, because you realize that you're almost removing humans from the picture. I mean, you got Skynet, right? And Terminator. You got, you don't need a human to drive anymore. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just curious of your guys' thoughts, because if you haven't experienced the technology, I'm curious of your guys' thoughts on, how far is too far on that,
Well, I think, first of all, I have not been in a self-driving Tesla, so
Right.
So I've not experienced it. But
No.
ultimately, computer power and AI will get to the point where cars can drive themselves.
Right.
What shocks me is that Tesla's willing to go through this in the U.S., where you can get $1 billion lawsuit for anything. Like,
Right.
people are going to be diving in front of Teslas to get run over by them. I mean, if they get run over by a Toyota, well, they'll become a millionaire because it was a Toyota. But if they get if they get run over by Tesla, they're going to get $100 million. And it means why Domino's doesn't have the 30-minute pizza delivery guarantee anymore, because somebody got run over by a Domino delivery guy who was trying to scramble to get to the pizza delivered in 30 minutes, and they got something at $90 or $100 million. And if they'd been run over by just some other random person, they would have got $1 million or $500,000, but they got $100 million because it was Domino's. And I have to imagine the same thing's going to happen to Tesla. I'm surprised they're not doing this in some countries with crappy tort laws where they can run people over and not have to pay big lawsuits. Because if it happens in Alabama, someone will get a gigantic settlement that they got run over by a Tesla. And so that's the part that shocks me. But cars, you have to figure that the computer power will eventually get to the point where cars drive themselves. And maybe, like right now, I'm teaching my 16-year-old daughter how to drive. She'll be really driven, we've driven like 5 or 6 times now.
I'm a year
And
away from that. So
yeah,
I got a
it's really
15-year-old.
it's really really fun the very first time you sit in the car and they're driving. Like you're just gripping that you're gripping the door handle, and so like yeah, I kind of got my hand on the steering wheel a little when she's driving, but you don't have your feet on the pedals, so
Right.
you're just hoping that they stop when they come out to a main street. But
You're along for the
yeah,
ride.
self-driving, yeah, they might be the last generation that needs to learn how to drive. Who knows?
It's wild when you think about it, right? And you it just it floors me. I don't know, and you have a situation where you have, like, let's say, like, seniors, right? Everybody has grandparents, or some had some grandparents that, hey, a family member has to go get them and bring them to the family party, right? Or take them to a doctor's appointment. What if their car just takes them, right? You think about all the implications. I mean, there's negative and positive, but you think about all the positive, mobility wise, right? Just from that argument for that, I see the possibilities of this, but I also worry about the implications, right? Like, when you're driving right now, if my car's driving, I'm still responsible for the car. It's my fault if I hit somebody, not the car's. Even though, because I should be able to control it, right? I can press the brake if I want to. I can turn it off if I want to. I can grab the wheel. Um, but you're right. Remember, like, it honestly, the ability to litigate nowadays seems to be, pretty high in the U.S. sometimes. So I'm surprised that some of these companies are putting themselves out there a little bit like that. What do you think on the whole thing, Dave? On the whole self-driving thing?
Yeah, so I've never even been in a Tesla. I've seen them
Mm.
see around. We do have
Right.
a supercharging station here in town, just because uh, it's at a mall near uh, the 401, which Boomer would know. That's like a main corridor from Windsor, which is right across the border from Detroit, all the way through Toronto, right to the Quebec border, and then it turns into
Mhm.
another highway number into Montreal and Quebec City, right? So it's a very main freeway. So I was actually driving by there the other morning, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's surprising! Not a single Tesla being charged." Because usually there's at least always two or three there, if not. And that was a weekday morning. So if it had been like a Saturday morning, I'm sure there would have been 10 there,
Right.
right? On the self-driving thing, it's uh, it's my understanding that they're just really right now still at the data collection stage, where they just need to keep collecting data, keep collecting data. The more
Crunching the
the more
numbers.
Teslas are driven around, the more data is collected, and that's how they're getting to the point of these cars being able to drive themselves, right? Is they know
Right.
where things are. On the lawsuit thing, I agree with both you guys. It seems crazy that they wouldn't, that they are like kind of full bore in the U.S. Like Boomer alluded to, anybody can get sued for anything there.
Oh yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, and I
I
mean,
just wanted to bring up, like, you talk about it as a company, right, and what they're trying to do. I just, it's really, I'm a technology guy, so obviously I find it fascinating from that angle, but it's really interesting when you broaden the scope to, like, a general perception. When I tell people, or they see my car, or I see things, they have a lot of odd assumptions, and I feel it's really odd sometimes. Like, you feel the weirdest questions about your car that you just like, wait, is that an actual question? Are you kidding? Like, are you playing right now? Or is it, it's really interesting, from a technology perspective, explaining things to people. I'm like, it's just a car, guys. Like, it's a car. It runs.
You drive a Tesla, I
I
take it.
do. Yeah. Model Y. Yeah. Yeah.
Which one?
The Model Y, the slightly SUV-ish, not with the one
Yeah,
with the doors that go like that. Yeah. The other one.
the window. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, I know which one is the Model 3, and then the other ones I don't. They're the Model S, like the original bigger one.
Yeah. The
And then I
original
don't know what the
sedan.
rest of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the X too. The X is the bigger SUV. It was
Yeah.
a little outside my price range. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I have the bigger three, I guess you want to talk about the SUV-ish version of the three. So that's what I
Okay.
got.
And then do you have the FSD?
I do. It's a $99 a month, so it's $100 a month. I didn't buy it outright, but I feel like if I donate out once, in the month, I could pay for it. And I just, again, from a technology perspective, I mean, does it make fiscal sense? Yeah. I mean, it's fun, but is it fun from a technology kind of loving standpoint? Yeah, hell yeah, it's awesome. Love it. It's so much fun to experience. It's not perfect, but it's fun as hell to experience.
How much do you use it? Do you, like, when you drive, do you usually
Yeah.
turn that on?
But yep. Yep. I use it more on the highway, I think. I feel like on the streets, it can be a little over hesitant, like when it comes to a stop sign. Or it's funny because it'll come to a stop like at a street light, and then when the light's green, it takes off like a bat out of hell right now. Like it's really
Oh.
it's in a hurry. Um, and apparently that's something they're working on. They call it a passenger comfort score. So apparently that's really low right now. Passengers are like, oh my God, and but it when it comes to a stop sign, it stops like three times. It stops, pulls forward, stops, pulls forward, and then it's like it's peaking. It's funny, but other than that, like it drives great. It really does. You gotta understand like the little nuances, I guess, of it. But I really on highways it kicks butt. Like it'll take me if I want to go to visit a family member and a couple cities over, it'll get me from my house to their house without me ever needing to really grab the wheel and do something. Nine times out of 10, most of the time 10 out of 10. But there are occasional weird things that happen. So, but I do subscribe. Yeah.
If you're first of all, are you in the LA area? What part is California?
Orange County. So
Orange County,
yeah, below LA. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you're going somewhere, you have to program their address in,
You do.
and then does it adapt to its original route if if the route is looking slow? Is it monitoring like Google's?
Yeah. So it has the Google like I think it ties into Google's like API for like maps and traffic.
Yeah.
So it has all that. So what it'll do is it'll reroute itself. And if you have FSD, let's say it gets on the highway and it's coming to a standstill, it'll exit and I'll do an alternative route. Yeah, it'll reroute itself. Yep.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
And in traffic, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you're saying it's 9 times out of 10. So
yeah,
because it's 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, you have to kind of be not driving it, but equally responsible for driving it all the time.
Yep. Yeah, I have to be able to take control. I mean, it'll tell you in the thing like you have to be able to take control at all times. I mean, there's the reason they call it supervised. They put the little parentheses in the end. I'm glad they did that because you see these hilarious videos, which I'm not sure is actually how it's possible. Maybe on the old one it was. If I take my eyes off the road, the thing will disengage itself really quickly. So I don't know how these people did that in the past, but you definitely can't do that now. You're responsible. Like if it again that they say that 1 out of 10 times, I'll have to grab the wheel and disengage it, or maybe it's not that it's going to hit something. It's just like it's making me uncomfortable. Something it's doing right. So. Right. And I just like, okay, I got to take control. And so that's what it is. It's never tried to fly me off a cliff or, put me in a wall anywhere. But there's times in which it cuts a corner a little close, and I'm like, whoa, nope, grabbing the wheel. I don't like how close it is to the curb, or something. So there's things like that. So,
and I guess,
yeah, I just,
in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, it goes exactly 30 and not 31.
It does. Yep. You can actually set it. You can set a variance, so it can be like plus or minus a percentage or miles per hour. So let's say that you want to give it like a 7 mile an hour leeway, so it'll go up to 37 in that zone, but it will follow the speed limit. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because that would drive me crazy. Because who drives the speed limit?
Nobody here. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But not to get off on a whole Tesla side rant or anything like that, Dave, to derail everything. It's just I find technology fascinating. So
yeah, me too.
I'm an enjoyer of it for sure.
No, it's been a very interesting chat about Tesla. And before we wrap up Tesla and start talking about some other stocks, wrap up Tesla. I know you guys have, I'm sure, seen Kelly's self-made masteries on Twitter.
The rose
chrome gold wrap. What do you guys think of that? Personally, I think it looks amazing.
Their car looks beautiful.
It does. It wouldn't be for me, but I love I love when cars are unique like that. Like that's just because everybody's car it's personal, right? So you do whatever you want to it, and you think it's the slickest thing. And I think that's awesome. But I couldn't keep that thing clean to save my life. My car's white and it's hard enough to deal with, right? I swear I get like bugs and birds targeting the thing on purpose. Like, so it's more power to that wrap. Whoever did that wrap did an amazing job. It's really cool.
Shout out to them as well.
Oh, I want to give a shout out, by the way, to Teddy, because Teddy commented earlier. And
he should be here. He should be here for all this car talk. He's the car guy.
He is the car guy. Teddy sends me messages sometimes when he's out doing, like, he was in a Hummer EV the other day, and I think he was in one of the Silverado EVs, and he knows I'm an EV guy, so he sent me some fun messages about driving and stuff like that. Man, I love talking to Teddy. He's my boy. Margaritas for sure. Me and him are margarita fans. So
Me too.
hell
Shout out
yeah.
to the
Who's that?
dividend dog.
Yes, sir.
We got an EV a couple months ago, Audi Q4.
Oh, nice.
And so
Well, how is it?
it's good. My wife drives it, and so I've driven it once or twice just to drive it. It's so different than
Sure.
pushing the pedal down
It
is so different than in a gas car. It really is. But
It is.
it's fun to have. She's got to drive a little bit farther to take my daughter to camp tomorrow or Tuesday. So she's going to charge it to 100% for the first time because it's the automatic up to 80%. So she's got to try
same
and
here.
solve how to charge it to 100%. Go in the settings and change it. But no,
Yeah.
they're cool with the amount of power because I have a very powerful car, and it's such a different feel. Like my car roars when you're booting it. I have an Audi S6 with the twin turbo, and they're very fast and they got a lot of power. But I want to race her one day. I want to see who's faster off the line because her EV, her little SUV might be faster than my car.
Those things are it'll the power will surprise you. I think that's the first thing. It doesn't shift. It doesn't need to.
Yeah, it just goes.
It just goes. Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Well, that's a lot of car talk, a lot of Tesla talk.
I mean, yeah.
I did name the episode "Let's Talk Stocks," so let's talk some other stocks. Anything else you guys have been watching recently or keeping an eye on?
Individual stocks, just in general, the Canadian, the last couple of weeks, the Canadian market has been pulling back as opposed to the S&P, which has just continued to roar ahead. But the S&P, when you look at the stats, it's something like 50% of stocks are not up. It's all being driven by a few stocks, Nvidia and those ones. And one thing I think is that it's the online retail investing, I think is partially, not, I don't know, to blame or it's a result of that, because people now that come in and invest on their own, they're just going to invest in the companies they know, which is Apple and Microsoft and Google. Like, who's going to invest in some number 300 S&P company that makes screws or something like that in Lansing, Michigan? Like, there's all these companies that regular people have never heard of that have sales of 20 billion, 50 billion, and no one's heard of them because they make things in the background that are parts for business. And so any young person is going to come in and they're going to invest in the same 20 companies. You look on Twitter, on FinX, the number of stocks that get discussed is tiny. It's tiny.
And it's like you just said, it's all the same ones over and over again. The Nvidia's, Apple's, Google, Microsoft, Amazon.
Yeah.
The Magnificent Seven, as they call them. So, and then a few others kind of scattered in there, but you're right. There's probably about 20 or 25 out of 500.
Yeah. And the other companies, it's not that they get no love, is that people who aren't in the business of being a stockbroker don't know anything about them. They've never heard of them. Like one of the companies I own, American companies, Johnson Controls, so no one's going to invest in that. Who's going to invest in Carrier, even though they probably have a Carrier air conditioner at their house. It's not something they're going to invest in. They're going to invest in the tech stocks they know, or maybe even in things like Walmart or Costco or Target, because they know that as well. But I think there's a small amount of knowledge of just a small amount of companies. And so the companies that are getting the love keep getting all the hype because they're going up. Everybody's investing in them. They're getting to be pretty extreme multiples now on a lot of the companies. And the S&P as a whole, it's when they show the multiple earnings multiple of the S&P over decades, it's up at a high point again now.
So do you think there's opportunity there in those other, like, let's say those other 450, 475 other companies in the S&P?
Maybe, yeah. I guess there is, but it's like you look at companies that have low PE ratios.
Mhm.
And so you think, oh, that's a good one to buy. It's trading at only 8 times earnings, and this other one's trading at 20 times earnings. But then 10 years later, it's the same. It's still trading at a low PE. And so certain companies in certain industries trade at lower multiples, and they just seem to
Mhm.
continue that. It doesn't balance with it doesn't balance out over time with the high flying companies. So I'm sure there's opportunity, amongst 500 companies, there's obviously opportunity, but in general, I don't know. Maybe this will continue. Maybe this will get more extreme.
I feel like I think Philip Boomer nailed it. For me, and I'm sure a lot of investors are like this. I invest in companies that I use in some way, shape, or form. Like Procter and Gamble, right? I mean, dude, I think everybody's probably got Procter and Gamble something in their house somewhere easily. So, and not a company I'm invested in any longer, but like 3M, right? I mean, all over the place. And or like Dave likes to say, turn the cash register around, right? I invest in Edison International, which is the local power company here, that pays dividends, and the stock's done. I mean, most companies, like Boomer's just saying, are at or near all-time highs. So the stock's done great, and so I invest in companies that I really do believe in. But also, like Boomer said, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of killer deals out there, but that's if you're under the mindset that we're at a top. I don't think anybody can predict that. I have failed miserably at trying to time the market. I'm not great at
Everyone
it.
has, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Yes, me too.
I'm not a great gambler, so I just kind of, like, you see when I post, you see just consistency. I'm just kind of every week I'm going into some ETFs and purchasing some shares and looking for a deal. I mean, I could, Nvidia split recently, right? Obviously, everybody thought it was going to drop, and it didn't. Right? It started going back up again. So if you waited, you missed out. Right? Now, does that mean it's going to return to the mean and go lower? Hey, it might, but it might just keep going. So you got to think, like, am I going to purchase my full position? No, maybe I'll do a few shares and just kind of, dollar cost average into it. But man, it feels like, for me, I feel like I'm waiting for the hammer to drop, and the hammer's not there. So it just keeps going. And so I'm myself remaining consistent, but I'm nowhere near the volume of buys I was doing, a year ago, even at this point. And for my loss, because I missed a bunch of share appreciation.
Yeah, same for me.
It's weird, man.
Yeah, I'll never sell and take my portfolio out, but my buying
Right.
has slowed down. I made a post about this, I know, months ago, 6 months
Yeah,
ago,
I remember
whatever,
seeing
about
it. Yeah.
are you willing to buy at the top? Like, and so I've bought way less, and like
Uh-huh.
you, like, to my detriment, because the market has kept powering forward. Though I do buy, 80% of my stuff is in the Canadian market, and the Canadian market has done well, but it's not done what the S&P has done.
You wanna get all when stocks were hitting a skid, what was it, 2022? We had just a real gnarly year. I had bought Nvidia at like 130, and I got rid of it at like 150 or whatever.
Well,
It
I
was
made
right around
10%.
that time. I thought I was the slickest, smartest trader in the world, and now you see it $1,000 and then it's split. I'm like,
Yeah.
great job, man. That's great. Like, and it's
Hindsight
just,
is 2020, right? We all have those
it's
stories.
brutal.
Well, my
Yeah.
son in the car the other day. He's in business he just finished first year business school, but we were in the car, and
Nice.
he was asking about Nvidia, and because during COVID, we drove to all these different computer stores because you couldn't get the chip he wanted he was building a computer, and so we went to all these different stores and we couldn't get the chips, and he goes, everybody wants those chips, and he goes, how come you didn't buy the company then? I said to him, I go, well, because they were having obviously production problems to not being able to keep up and stuff, but who thought this would happen?
Right.
Some people did, I guess, but
Right. Yeah.
not me.
I think the same thing. Going to these companies. One I was at the other day was Chipotle, $3,000 share price. I mean, dude, I love burritos and burrito bowls, but I'm
Mhm.
not going to swing a $3,000 one share situation. And a lot of people have it, or bought it at like 2,000 or something, right? But
Yeah.
it's going to split coming up, and I'm sitting there thinking like, again, one of those companies that I go eat there sometimes. I'm thinking about it, but I always feel like, and I know it's a classic, meme thing, but I always feel like the second I buy it, it'll probably drop by half. So
Me too.
Yeah. We've
but
all
I'm
been
thinking
there
about it
too,
because
right?
I think it's like this coming week or something. It's really soon that it's going to split.
Okay.
So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. I'm curious to see. I want to see it drop a little bit before I buy it, but it could be,
Do we
one of those
know?
situations where it just keeps sailing up. So
I mean, their
Do
food
we
their
know if
food
that's
is
going to be a
good.
10-to-1
Uh,
split?
I like
no,
burritos.
it's more than that. I'll look it up real fast while you guys are chatting, but it's
Because
more
a
than
ten to
that.
one split would still make it a $300 stock, right? Which is
Is it a
300
10 to
US
1?
dollars is
50 to 1.
Oh, 50 to 1.
50 to
So
1.
it'd go to $60. Is there
Yeah,
in your area down in OC, there's have you been to a place called Chronic Tacos?
I have. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Yep.
owned by, so it was started down there, and then a friend of ours from here in Vancouver, he he's married to an American, and I
hmm
believe his mom might be American too. So, but he was up here, he was in the same business as us. He moved down there, and he bought Chronic Tacos, and so he
Oh,
and there was one in Vancouver, and there still is one in Vancouver, but so I don't know if he bought the chain out 100% or if he
hmm
bought a bunch of it and still runs it with the owner. So he moved down there and he runs Chronic Tacos now.
we have a lot of being in Southern California. I'm probably 2 hours from the Mexican border. So our Mexican food here is insanely good. I mean,
Oh yeah, I love it too.
bar
It's
none. I
really
mean, I could eat it every day. I love Mexican food. So it could be tacos, tacos, and more tacos, and
yeah,
happy
me too.
camper. So yeah,
Yeah, me too. It's good food. It's tasty. I like it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've got no complaints with Mexican food either.
Hell yeah. Get the margaritas going, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I love margaritas as long as they're salted.
Yes. So the other thing, Dave, that we talked about DCA and purchasing in a market that is again chilling at all-time highs, or just seems to be. There's no quit in this market right now, right? It just wants to go and run, run, run. And a lot of newer investors, like they sit there and think like, well, I'm gonna wait for the dip, right? Like myself, I mean, I wait for it to get a little lower. But it's like my way of doing, again, buying these ETFs every week, like DGRO, right? The DGRO or SEHD or VYM, is just trying to stay engaged. Waiting for if there is a deal, great. But again, going back to timing the market, the fool's errand. Just stay in it. It doesn't mean you have to buy a full position, but if you believe in what and you have conviction in the ETF or the company, I mean, yeah. I mean, look at the charts and see what's going on. But there's nothing wrong with dollar cost averaging on a position. I really don't, especially if it cruises higher. Could it reverse? Sure. But then you're maintaining that buy, right? You're going to keep doing it. So I don't know. It's we're in weird times. I feel like when you look out right now, and I look at something like McDonald's, uh, has really hit the skids. As far as share price right now. I mean, it's at a decent, not necessarily budget, but it's at a decent price. But you look at these restaurants, and it's a $20 meal,
Yeah,
for one person. This is fast food. This isn't a restaurant. You're not sitting down, and you walk in and you order your own food on a kiosk. There's not even a human.
yeah,
And it's like,
Yeah.
what world are we living in? I mean, I know that's where we just talked about AI and computers, right? I know this is where this is going, but um, I feel like looking out, going to restaurants, like I've had to cut back a lot. Like it's hard financially to
Yeah.
eat out even in fast food, and so I look at some
Yeah,
of these
inflation's
companies,
been a
and
kicker, right? Like McDonald's is
it
expensive now.
has,
McDonald's used to be relatively inexpensive or mid
right?
expensive, and now it's just now
Well, you
you're
think
like,
yeah.
well, I could go to McDonald's and spend 20 or $30, or I could go to a sit down restaurant and get a plate for
$20.
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And have service and everything. I mean, yeah, sure, you're paying tip, but you look at these, like they're bringing back the $5 menu, right? But
In the US, not in Canada, which I'm upset about.
we need to write a sternly worded letter to somebody, Dave, and tag everybody in it.
Yeah.
That's not okay, McDonald's. You understand me?
That's right.
Yeah, take
It is
care of our
not
northern
okay.
friends.
But our Costco hot dog is only $1.50 Canadian, so we're good there.
Yeah, Costco hot dogs
like
cannot
US, so.
cannot be that food cannot be understated. You know, honestly, like the value in Costco food is just there. I mean, it's the cheapest stuff you'll find.
It's the funniest
I just
thing
want to get in this.
It
Shout
really
out to
is.
Craig, who's listening while he is out on his run, and who's looking for that SCHD dividend coming soon. I'm predicting a sizable increase.
Dude, did you see?
Over
So
60%.
the back and forth. I think it was obviously it was him and. Oh man, it was a dividend breeder. Anyhow, they were going. They had like they were talking about trying what dividend is gonna come out of SCHD coming up. And we all saw. I don't know if you guys saw, like VYM has the second biggest dividend. It's $1.07 or $1.02 or something like that. Second biggest dividend they've ever paid. The Vanguard high yield index fund VYM, and that's awesome. I'd love to see more of that. I wishful thinking, right? But it was interesting their back and forth on that thread about their thinking behind what the dividend price is going to be this quarter, and I'm really curious to see where it ends up. You guys have seen probably with my stuff, I buy it every week, one share, and it's really cool to see every quarter. You get all those weeks in from the last quarter. There's shares you bought, and you get that much more money, right? And that drip, reinvest those dividends, and I'm excited to see it.
Another great comment here. What are your thoughts about REITs? Offices are a dead business walking.
Oh, that's rough. I think I don't know.
REITs in general, I think REITs have probably hit their bottom for the most part. Maybe not office REITs, but in general, I think the REIT across the board, if you had an ETF of REITs, it's probably hit its bottom. And I think REITs are a place that you can invest now. Office is a terrible business, though. There's going to be a lot of office buildings going bankrupt. There was a sale of whatever, a 30 or 40 story tower in one of the major American cities where it sold for a couple $1 million, and it had previously sold for over 100 million because people just want to not own them anymore. So the companies that are office focused, I'm not a huge fan of those. The big companies here in town, when they're moving, they're going from like 7 stories in a building to like 4 stories, 4 floors in a building, because half the people work from home, and that's going to keep happening in offices all over the place. I listened to a podcast the other day that they were talking about the back to work percentages, and Toronto was number 1 in North America for the percentage of people back to work as compared to the day before COVID. But a lot, and Toronto was still only around 60 to 75%, something in that range, depending on the day of the week. But most American cities were still like at 40%, 50%. Like, so companies are paying for office space, and they pay a lot. They pay. I mean, it's their biggest expense of any downtown type firm, any law firm or accounting firm. Their biggest expense, I mean, other than their employees, is their rent. And why would they keep paying it when their lease comes up if they can just lease a lot smaller? And so
why would they pay for empty space, right? Is what
exactly. And then they're also doing other things that because rent is so expensive, they were already changing how their floor plans work. A lot of them, traditionally in law firms or accounting firms, the partners would have a big office with a meeting, like with their desk and stuff, but also a little meeting table for clients. Offices are not like that anymore. Now they have offices with desks, and there'll be like 5 or 6 little meeting rooms on the floor that they could use, as opposed to all 50 partners having that space in their office. So they were already consolidating into smaller floor plans, and now with COVID, even less, because lots of their staff work from home, their back office staff work from home, and so the office buildings are going to continue to suffer I mean, space always gets taken up. It's why new buildings would always get built because the economy is always expanding.
Mhm.
But that's going to take a while. Whereas other parts of the industry, such as the warehouse REITs, in Canada, definitely there's a shortage of warehouses. We're in that space personally. That's a part of our business, and like around here, there's a huge shortage. Like as opposed to when you fly into LA, the last 10 minutes or more of flying into LAX, you're flying over warehouses. You're coming from a certain direction. There's just so
You
much
are.
warehousing.
Yep.
There's so much warehousing around it. Whereas here in town, it's really limited, and there's a big shortage. And so I think that industry will do well because as people start shopping from home and everything's ordered and staged in Amazon warehouses or whatever companies' warehouses, and then last mile companies that do deliveries. So that business I think will do okay. The business like Vici, people are very high on that. Like Vegas, it's
Casinos,
Vegas. What could ever happen? But look at what happened to the Vegas stocks in 2007, 2008. They all went down from like $100 to like $1 or $2, and they were going bankrupt. And they all consolidated. There's only like 2 companies now, so that can happen there too. If the economy does hit the skids a little bit, Vegas definitely gets affected.
Yeah, you can you think about the RETI. I agree. Like office space around
We
here,
lost
the
Boomer
company.
there for
Oh,
a second.
we still have you?
Sorry, say again.
Oh no, he's there.
We lost you there for a second.
Oh.
Okay.
The company that I work for during the pandemic closed the office and sent everybody home, like a lot of companies. But they decided at one point to do a hybrid situation and then just went full work from home. So we had 27 office buildings that are now vacant. I mean, they sold all the buildings; they're all gone. So you talk about, like Kuba's talking about, office and REITs, REITs being a dead business walking. I mean, there is so much office space around, Southern California that's available. It's mind blowing. So I don't know if I would get into that business. It doesn't seem like a great situation for them right now. But then you go into like the home market right around me has just exploded, and in an upward trajectory way. Right, the housing prices have gone in nuts, and they slow down like maybe 1% or 2, and then go straight back up again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the market right now, right? We're in this, to the moon kind of trajectory, and it goes back to timing the market, right? It's almost impossible to figure out if it's just going to suddenly stop, hit the top, and start trending down, or it's just going to continue. So it's hard, like for me personally, I do own O, right, which is a very popular US REIT. But if I was going to get into that game like further right now, I might look into like REIT ETFs. I feel like you're spreading your money out a little bit amongst a bunch of companies, and instead of kind of putting all your eggs in one basket, which is perfectly fine if you have the conviction on a specific company, but you're kind of spreading that out, right, a little bit. Your risk, yeah, sure, you might miss up on some upward momentum or downward, which is a good thing, but you're going to spread that risk out a little bit, and I think that's a great place to park cash if you have conviction in that particular sector, warehousing, right? Things like that. So
Yeah, my thoughts there on REITs, I agree with you guys. My office REITs have taken an absolute beating over this last year or 2.
Mhm.
Residential REITs, because the housing crisis here in Canada, there's just not enough. The population just keeps increasing. We hit 40 million last year. We hit 41 million this year, and there's not enough housing for them. So I think residential REITs have opportunity there as well. Agree 100% with Boomer. Warehousing is definitely needed. And I think the point we also have to make is the interest rates, right? In the US, the Fed has been holding steady now for I don't know how long. Just what was that, about a few weeks ago, Boomer, where the BOC, Bank of Canada, actually cut by 25 basis points. So I think that's
a week and a half, maybe.
Is that? Oh, it was.
I think so.
Seems
or
like it
two
was
and a
longer
half.
ago than that, but okay.
Pretty recently, yeah.
It feels like a week is a month nowadays, Dave. Honestly, don't blame you. I
Yeah.
forget what day it is half the time. So
Yeah.
So what kind of
but
business are you
obviously
in? Right.
interest rates
Sorry.
are major impact on your REITs, right? Because they're carrying mortgages or whatever on these buildings, and if
Yeah.
the interest rates go up, they're paying more. If interest rates go down, they're paying less, right?
Yeah, that's
right,
it's a big one. What kind of business are you in, Ray? That your company closed all its offices?
higher education.
Okay.
So I work for a university in IT. So we had probably like 2,000 staff, a couple thousand faculty. It's a bigger university. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it has shifted towards online education. We weren't a big traditional uh, class kind of classic, college style. But we shifted more to online learning, and it got huge, and it still is. But it became less and less reason to have all this expensive real estate. Um, and so they sold it. The interesting thing is they actually gave each employee a bonus out of all those sales, which was, I mean, nice. Working from
That's
home to
nice.
me, I feel like is a bonus. That's great. You're seeing my workstation right now. This is where I work every day. So
Okay.
this is it's not bad to walk 10 feet from where I sleep to where I work. I mean, it's the commute's not bad. So there's no traffic.
Especially in LA or in
Yeah,
OC.
right, exactly.
But one thing I find with that work from home is for people like you guys or me, if we work from home, it's fine. We already have all our business relationships. We're friends with all the people that we used to be in the office with. But for
hmm
somebody who it's their first job, they go from being in school with people to just being sitting by themselves at home and they're 20
Yep,
years old. And
yep,
30 years from now, they're still sitting all by themselves at home. And
yep.
I mean, the only fun part of work is the other people that are there. Like the work isn't
Agreed.
particularly fun. Work is work, but the fun part of work is the social interaction. And so they're going to get, you know,
None of it.
they're going to get none. I mean, especially the kids who graduated in 2020 and their grad was canceled, and their first 2 or 3 years of university sucked because that was all canceled, or they're learning by themselves. And now they have a job where they sit by themselves. If they're an accountant, for instance, and they're
hmm
working from home, so they just get sent a bunch of files with numbers and they just sit and do that shit all day long. And like that would suck. It would be so unfun. Like when they're
Yep.
40 years old and they've worked for 20 years sitting in a room by themselves, I just don't see how. It just seems like a terrible, like it seems like a terrible thing. But it's perfectly fine for people who've been at work for a lot of years and you're already friends with all these
Me, yeah.
people, and you can
hmm
call them, you can go golfing with them, you can go out with them because they're your friends. And I don't know that I don't look forward to what it's going to be like
hmm
after people like it's funny. I used to read lots of science fiction, and Isaac Asimov in his universe, he had all the planets around Earth that humans had expanded to, and there in the early parts of those books there was about 10, and one of them, I don't remember which one it was called, the, no humans saw another human. If they did, it was horrible. They were disgusted by seeing another human, and they only had a bunch of robots. Like on the people who lived on Earth, they'd be like, one robot for every 5 people, but on this planet there was 100 robots per person, and they all
Right,
lived 5 miles from each other. And that's what
right.
that's what it's turning into. And I used to read those as a kid going, oh, this is so stupid. Like no one's ever going to be like this. But
Well,
we're
yeah,
yeah, we're like that
yeah.
now. So
That's a
My
really
guys,
interesting point, Boomer, about like younger people just starting a career. I never
right.
really thought about that before, but you're 100% right.
hmm
People our age, we've been in the workforce for way too long,
Years.
and
Yeah.
we know people. Whereas, yeah, I'd never thought of that. That's a very interesting point.
The guys that work for me are, in their 20s. And it's odd to think that in your 20s is like a kid now. Like I apparently I'm marching towards the top of the hill, right? Like maybe a
I'm
little
already
closer than I
there. I'm
think I
I'm on
am.
the I'm on the way down.
Yeah.
But they have not really known an office environment. They got hired in a remote work situation, and one of them doesn't even live geographically near where our data center is. So it's interesting bringing them on board because I have daily meetings with them and kind of just run through a few quick things. But that's pretty much the main interaction they get, other than group chats, I guess, so to speak. Like they don't have a face-to-face personal interaction with people. And I know what I saw when my kids were going through that with school and how bad it got for social interaction. That those younger kids need that. That was terrible. I think it put that entire generation back. It really did. Was not a positive thing. And I think we're going to see the ramifications of that later. Boomer, like you're saying, like this generation coming up, and the younger generation, the 20s, and even the teens, all kind of went through that. People graduated high school with no graduation, right? So,
Yeah.
What's that going to do to them? Like later in life, are they just going to be introverts? I'm a guy. I'm an extreme extrovert. I love talking to people. Put myself into 100 people. I love it all day. So I don't. I'm glad I don't have that issue. But man, the people that do, this remote work situation is normal to them. And if you put them in an office environment, are they just going to sit there and be like lost?
Weirded
I
out
don't know.
by all the freaky other people that are near them.
What are all these humans doing here? Yeah.
So what do you think, Ray, as somebody who's gone to work from home? You said the commute's good and all that, but do you like being by yourself at home, so to speak?
Why are you calling Tim Ray?
Sorry, Tim. Sorry, not Ray.
It's okay.
Tim.
It's all right. You're good.
Because there's Ray R. There's also Ray R. and Tim R. Right. Ray. Yeah. Sorry.
I love Ray. Ray's a good dude. Is he in Florida? I'm trying to remember where he is. No, he's in.
Isn't he in Phoenix or something?
Oh, you know what?
It's old Scottsdale.
Him and Sansone Dave like hung out. So that's what I was thinking. Maybe he was in Florida on vacation or something. I remember that. Anyhow, sorry.
Sorry, Tim.
No, there's two things. When I was in my office, I would constantly be interrupted by things and it wasn't a social thing. It was like, oh, this, oh, this, oh, this, and I had to close my door. I didn't, it was okay. I did like the social aspect of it, being an extrovert social butterfly. I love talking to people, but when I have work to do, like I need to leave me alone, so from that perspective, from a productivity perspective, my production and my quality of work skyrocketed when we went home. What was interesting about it was there are times in the day where you're like, oh, I need to go downstairs and load the dishwasher. So you do. I couldn't do that if I was in the office, obviously. I'm not going to drive home and go load the dishwasher. So you start to find that your work and life balance has a weird skew to it. Like you'll go do that and you'll come back up and take a meeting. Or you'll go to lunch locally, right, and grab a beer. I would not do that. And nobody from work's listening, right? Okay. And we'll go grab a beer at lunch or something, and then go home because my boss is staring there. We're like, why'd you have a beer lunch, man? Like so, it's a really weird skew. You find that your how you do things, your flow changes, and it's not always for the better. Yeah, it's convenient. But it's not always for the better. I still go into the office. We have a small office now, not the big buildings anymore. But and so I see the team like once a month personally, but once a month versus every Monday through Friday, right? Big difference. I still talk to them, but it's not in person, right? So
yeah,
I've noticed like body language change, in the team and even like leadership. And I don't know, but from a productivity standpoint and a personal preference standpoint, there's nothing beats walking 10 feet to go to work. And the freedoms that come with being able to, again, go downstairs and do the dishes or, run a quick errand or something like that on a 15-minute break versus not being able to do any of that, having to wait till you get home. But the social interaction part of it, there's something to be said for that. Like I mentioned the kids in school, right? It's the same relation there. You kind of need that sometimes. At least I do. I need that connection. I like it.
That's where the office is. Yeah, the office side gets hit for people that are in that industry. But people like Dave, your job's gonna always, maybe not necessarily, but there's a lot of jobs where the people will always still need to work together because they're physically they're physically doing stuff. But Dave, I guess you could probably be located not at your site, but
I could, but it would be very difficult.
Right.
So, and just to kind of add to Tim's point, so our office is actually like open concept office. So I don't have a door I can close, and anybody can come to my desk at any time.
Right.
And the problem with that, because like you said, you're trying to do something, productivity, somebody comes up to your desk, they want you to solve their problem. They want you to work on
Right.
their problem right now. And
Right.
it's like,
Yep.
I'm trying to do this for someone else, or I'm trying to, do A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so you, you become very good at multitasking because you kind of
Yep.
have to. You're working on 3 different or 4 different things for 4 different people at the same time. But yeah, I can definitely see your point of having that, like, just on an interrupted work time and just kind of
Yep.
going for it, right?
Yeah, the personal freedoms cannot be understated as far as, being able to do, again, what you need to do personally, kind of mixing the two. But it really does blur some lines, and it takes a little while to get there. But once you're there, you find that it's like you're splitting your time. You're actually like working kind of less, but when you're working, you're getting more done. It's
Right.
weird to, yeah, like put into words, but it it's a nice benefit. I mean, but
Yeah, well,
the
like your
social
point
interaction is
of
bad.
so you like
It
your
make,
point of loading the dishwasher, or at any given time you can
Hmm.
take the dog
Yeah,
out for a walk or
right,
whatever, right?
and it makes your
right.
workday shorter. If you had a half
It
hour
does.
commute each way,
Right.
now your workday went from 9 hours to 8 hours.
The
So
interesting thing about that is I had a conversation with somebody. I used to use the drive home specifically. It was about probably 45 minutes with traffic in Southern California, but to decompress, But when I get up from this desk and I go downstairs, that's what, like 10 seconds. There's no decompress there, so it's weird how it affects you. Um, and I know it's a first world problem to have, so to speak, right? I've complained about something that's usually a nice benefit, but I like that decompress time. I don't have to talk to anybody. I can kind of, just sit there and relax and cruise down the road and listen to music or a podcast, or audiobook, right? Or, something like that. So it's got its pros and cons.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Dave, what was
I'm
your
gonna pull up
top
another.
stock on? Sorry, what was the top
Ooh.
stock
Sorry,
on
what were you gonna say, Boomer?
your weekend on the end of the week review yesterday?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch the start of that.
Sorry, what was your top stock that you and Joe talked about on your weekly review?
Oh, this past week there wasn't much to talk about. We had Algoma Steel one day. Um, what was it? Kroger, I think, was in this week.
Oh, Kroger, yeah. Hey, who
Yeah, I'd
doesn't go
have
to
to
the
go.
supermarket, right?
That was like Boomer. That was like nearly 48 hours ago. How do you expect me to remember that?
Oh, how
That's
dare you, sir?
48 beers ago. Okay.
It was 48 years ago. IPO wise, to answer Kuba's question, like I keep on top of seeing stuff that come out. I don't recognize any of the companies that are coming up on IPO. I don't know if I would get into anything. I typically find that IPOs, I mean, yeah, they'll skyrocket, but they'll always kind of come back down, right, and hit that median, return to median, right? So I for my personal portfolio, again, I buy what I use. So I don't see anything that I do use in this particular group of anything coming up. So if you were gonna go after any IPOs, if somebody was like, hey, I have conviction in this, I love what this company does, I want in, maybe you buy a few shares and then see what happens. But I feel like a lot of times it'll, if it starts at $50 and it goes to 75, at some point within a few weeks, it might be at 35 or 40, right? I mean, that seems to be a pretty common thing. Again, they could just
Yeah.
skyrocket and keep going, but
No, but usually it
I
does what you're
wait it
saying.
out a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It usually has a big bump on the first day or two, and then
Right.
it sinks below its IPO number for a fair
Yep.
while.
So if you find anything that you think's like, yeah, this is great, I love this company. Again, maybe buy a few shares and see where it goes. But then, like, if you're gonna like to get a bigger position, I would sit back and let it kind of settle out. Not necessarily advice per se, obviously, but that's what I do, in my personal portfolio. So, and I feel like it's done well for me if I have bought something at the beginning.
Hey, Boomer, I just went back and looked. There was Lazy Boy and Kroger, and then Algoma Steel were like the only 3 pretty much
Lazy
worth
boy,
mentioning
man.
from last week.
Yeah.
And
That's-
were their
that's-
earnings? Did they have good earnings, or how were their performances?
Go and watch the episode.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it yesterday. I usually watch it. I didn't watch it yesterday.
I
2
feel
days
like
ago.
Friday.
This is Sunday.
Friday.
Yeah.
Kroger's probably doing well, but at Lazy Boy, man, that is some expensive furniture. So
Yeah.
I
That's
I don't
exactly
feel
what
like
we were talking about, actually, is like,
Mhm.
who are the people that are buying like $2,000 or more, $5,000 for a couch when you could get another perfectly good couch for $1,000 or whatever, right?
When you could buy a love sack for 1,000.
right. I mean, I don't know
That's
about
all
you
you
guys,
wanted to
but
talk about. That's why you were
Love
asking.
oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Times are tough right now. I think for a lot of folks, and a $5,000 couch isn't even in the splurge category. It's in the not happening category. So,
Right.
but maybe the economy is fueled on credit right now. You see that, the credit rates are the highest they've ever been, as far as the credit that's outstanding right now. So, I'm not that guy. I don't carry any credit debt. One of another, ex Twit or Fin Twitter, whatever, like, person like Lindsay Stamp, like she's out there and she talks about, bringing her debt down from, like high credit card debt all the way down to zero. And it's an awesome story. If any of you don't follow her, go check her out. But
Yeah, she's been here on the podcast and told the story.
yeah.
So
yeah, and it's that was a similar story. I had like 20,000 in credit card debt, and battled it down, and it's really fascinating. But you see these numbers of this credit, the credit outstanding going just sky high, and I just, man, you're like, this is going to end badly, and
yeah, it will end badly for a lot of people, obviously. Right?
yeah, and you just don't want to be that. So I fight against that. But I feel like, like for the people buying these couches on credit, I hope you enjoy your couch. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see the earnings for these companies, especially something like Laser. They make a great product, don't get me wrong, but I can't see them continuing to go up. I just don't see how it's possible. But again, as I talked about earlier, my gambling percentage is probably 10% of being right. So I don't know if I would listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Probably do the opposite, but
Yeah, I'll disregard that last 1 minute.
I would. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, definitely
George
buy
Costanza,
Lazy
do
Boy
the
for
opposite.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Well, guys, we're well over an hour here. I'm perfectly good to keep talking for a little bit longer if you guys are up for it. We've covered a lot here. We talked a lot about Tesla off the top, which was fun.
Sure did.
A really good broad market overview there of sort of the S&P really being pulled along by those, top 5 or 7 stocks, and the
Yep.
Canadian market kind of dragging a little bit. I don't know, Boomer, what else are you thinking?
Well, I've been thinking for a little while that the markets are going to pull back. I mean, as Tim said,
Same.
he was thinking that, but we've been wrong.
Wrong. Yep.
And not just that the markets are going to pull back, but that the economy was going to pull back. And the
Yep.
Canadian economy already is. So the difference between the Canadian and US is that the Canadian economy now, even though we have GDP growth, we've had, I think, something like 7 quarters in a row of GDP per capita shrinking in Canada. So Canada's only growth is because they're bringing a billion immigrants to the country every year. So the growth is just coming from pure numbers, but the actual growth per person has been terrible, and I think it's probably close to the worst in history, having 7 quarters in a row. Like the government is completely out of favor now. The Canadian government, they've got something like 20% support. If there was an election today, they would get destroyed. And so,
Yeah.
Which we're all hoping for. Let's just call that election for tomorrow, please.
Yeah,
Just do it.
they're gonna. They won't. Yeah, in Canada, Tim, the elections. There's not set election dates. The government can stay in for 5 years, and they can call an election wherever they want. So if they get really popular after 2 years, they can just call an election right then when they're popular. And they did because
Can you
of
imagine
COVID.
the U.S. doing that? We just implode.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird system.
It's kind of insane because that's exactly what happened, right? Like Trudeau knew that his popularity was going down there in what was it, 2020 or 2021, but he still had enough party to win another election, so we called another election at the time. They won it with a minority government, and now here we are 4 years later or so, stuck with them, and we can't get rid of them fast enough. And they literally don't have to call an election now until, what is it, October 2025?
Another, one more year, a little over a year, yeah.
Wow.
And so they won't, and so they'll stretch it out because they're horribly unpopular, and the balance of power will shift a lot. Like if there's an election now, they would get completely wiped out. They would get destroyed. And so yeah, they're not going to call one. But the Canadian economic performance has been horrendous. So we've already turned that corner of our economy going down per person. And I think, it seems to be that the world might be moving towards that, because there's been a fairly long extended stretch of growth. And I mean, there was the blip of COVID, but it recovered so quickly. And we recovered all on just massive amounts of government spending, well, trillions and trillions of dollars.
Oh, Lord, the U.S.,
yeah. Well, not just there, but every country. Every
Yep.
country did the same thing. The Canadian government debt is like doubled in the last few years. They put so much money in, and every other country did the same thing. Every other westernized country did the same
Right.
thing. And so there were, the inflation that came about was a backlash, because of all the money floating around. It's made all that money ends up someplace. So when the governments pour all this money into the system, it goes someplace, and it only can end up in assets. So that money
Right.
has to end up, it doesn't just it gets paid in wages, but
Right.
then people spend their wages on buying food or whatever. But the companies that get it ultimately ends up in things. So
Right.
gold is at close to an all-time high. Bitcoin is gone from like being worth nothing to being worth $60,000 or whatever it's at now.
It's crazy.
Real estate has exploded in price. Like house prices, not as much in Canada, but they've gone up in Canada a lot. But in the US, they're up like 100% since the day before COVID. Pretty much in most of the country, a house that was worth $250 is now worth $500.
My house price when I purchased it in 2016, 17 has almost doubled.
Yeah,
When
and
I
a
bought
lot
it
of that,
today.
and how much of that doubling has happened since COVID? A lot of it, I would imagine.
Probably 80% of it, yeah,
Yeah,
at least.
and so the money, because the money ends up someplace. So it ends up in
It
real
does.
estate, ends up in stock. So the stock market is way up.
Mhm.
And even though the Canadian one has been not doing great since recently, it's still way up from pre-COVID. And so it ends up in stuff, and
Right.
and with more money chasing the same amount of stuff, all houses and whatever are all worth way more now. And so it's made things very expensive for people. Real estate is crazy. There's lots of snowbirds in Canada that go down south, and so lots of guys at our golf course had bought houses back after the 2007-8 financial crisis. Lots of guys bought houses down in Scottsdale or in Palm Springs area.
I would say Palm
And-
Springs. There's the snowbirds everywhere in Palm Springs. Not
Oh,
now.
everywhere.
It's out like 115 today in Palm Springs. So
Okay,
but in the wintertime though, the tons.
it's all Canadians down. Yeah,
we
and
have a family condo down there, and it's Canadians rent all around. Man, I love that. They're we barbecue together. It's great. Love them.
okay, yeah. So those are the nice ones. The rest, me and Dave aren't like that. We're kind of,
Yeah,
You
well,
guys
we
are nice.
try to
You're
be.
talking about big teddy bear Dave over there. You know what he is. Come on now.
but those places, like a lot of like Canadians bought down there, say in 2010, 2011, the Canadian
Yep.
dollar was at par. So a house that had been worth, say, 400 grand, they bought for 250, and
Right.
and 250 US was equal to 250 Canadian then, and now it's gone back to 400 grand or 500 grand, but it's
Right.
worth 650 or 700 grand Canadian. And
Right.
so the Canadians that bought back then have done great. Lots of them have sold now too, because it's just been such a giant windfall.
Right.
But it's that kind of thing of the amount of money chasing real estate has driven prices. And so it seems like it has to correct, but it doesn't have to, I guess. Like it,
No.
you know,
Well,
Yeah, that
keep
was the
going
word
up.
I was about to use, is like like I think we're all expecting at some point a market correction, but at the same time, it just keeps up and to the right, up and to the right.
I would
And I
have
do
told you
also want
that
to make
6
the
months
point, Boomer.
ago and been
Yeah.
been
I
wrong.
was just going to make the point also, Boomer. Like, we're kind of talking down the Canadian market, but the Toronto Stock Exchange did hit all-time highs there, like what, about 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's done well over, as you've alluded to, it's done well overall as well. But there has been quite a pullback since that all-time high there.
Yeah, it's down about 5%, I think, in the last little while. But yeah, no, it's also been on a great run as well.
Yep.
There's all that money went someplace, and a lot of
in the U.S. we have elections in November, right? So I mean, who knows what's going to happen then? With the market and the rates and stuff, right? And like I said, I'm just staying in it, doing my weekly buys. So it is what it is. So it's kind of just one day at a time. So
your election is like it's the greatest free TV show in history. Like
you guys must love watching the U.S. I abhor politics. I absolutely despise politics in general. If none of the above was an option for me personally, I'd be all over it. So as far as
I love politics. I love it. Yeah.
I don't know. But there is an election coming up, and I know it can get kind of weird and volatile during that time or right after it, and depending on who wins, right? So I don't know.
It's the greatest reality show of all time since 2016. It is literally the world's greatest reality show.
You're not wrong. If you're into it, it's entertainment value.
Oh, it's so much, like I'm into it, and the entertainment value is tremendous. But it's kind of sad, but the entertainment value is tremendous.
Sad's a good word for it. Yeah, I'm on board on that one.
Yeah,
I think most Americans would agree with you, Tim. Though, like the best option is none of the above. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not a party affiliate. I'm not a political guy, man. I just, I live life, dude, and it is what it is. But oh Lord, help me. We're along for the ride either way. So I just, dude, things definitely need to change. And the perfect U.S. president is that history teacher, that's teaching in a Pennsylvania school right now. He'll never be president, but that's the guy that you want at the helm, right? Not the billionaires. You want that guy, but
yeah.
It'll never happen.
You're 4 years. You're 4 years away from having a normal choice. Like, because this year's choice.
I look forward to 4 years from now, Boomer. If I got to be honest, as an American, I'm not speaking for the entire country, but I look forward to 4 years from now.
I have a feeling a lot of Americans would agree with you, Tim. One more here before we go. Are you guys bullish on the TSX at these cheaper prices?
I'm gonna let the Canadians take this one. Yeah.
Are we bullish? I guess, but that's a very qualified.
That's exactly how I feel, to be honest. Right? Yeah. It's like I guess so. Sure.
It really does seem like that. I mean, whatever. I mean, maybe I'm an eternal pessimist. I don't know, but to me, I think I expect to pull back still. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to take money out of the market, and it doesn't mean that I won't invest in the market, but I still think there will be a pullback.
I agree. I agree, but I agreed last year, so don't listen to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I know
the overall economic cycle is boom.
Yeah.
I know Tim's got to get going here soon, but Boomer, one final thought. Tomorrow night's game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, the Edmonton Oilers were down 3-0. It is now tied 3-3. What's going to happen tomorrow night in Sunrise?
Prediction
Florida?
time. I love it.
Well, how about not prediction, but what needs to happen? They need
to come out. Okay.
Yeah, Edmonton needs to come out and play how they played. They need to come out with the first 2 periods, what they've done the last couple of games. But the way they've played the third period, last game and the previous game, of just like sitting back and chipping the puck out and letting Florida bring it at them in waves over and over, like, and just holding on. I hate that kind of finish. I hate when teams just.
That's a tough way to survive a hockey game, right?
Yeah, they're just trying to protect the lead, and the way they protect the lead is letting the other guys have a shot on goal every 3 seconds. Like, play your game that was making you win. So if both teams play their best I think Edmonton will win. But it's going to come. There's so much luck about, you get 15 shots on goal, and none of them could go in, or with 15 equal shots, you could end up with 3 goals. And like Zach Hyman's breakaway at the end of the second period, that was really lucky that puck went in and that squeezed through his arm. So, my prediction, I want to see Edmonton win. I've been cheering for them. I love McDavid. He's like the greatest player since Gretzky and Lemieux and them. So I really want Edmonton to win the game. And I think both teams it's going to be a very nervous first period, I think, for both teams.
Yeah.
How about you, Dave? What do you think?
Well, I'd like to see Edmonton bring the cup back to Canada too. It's been 31 years since a Canadian team has won the cup, so we're definitely due. Obviously, we've had several Canadian teams in the Stanley Cup Finals over those 31 years. But
don't remind me.
I agree with you too. McDavid is like an amazing player, like you said, probably the best player since Gretzky and Lemieux.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be great to see him win his first cup as well.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
I hope they can do it.
Yeah, we'll see. With that said, thank you guys so much for being here. This has been an extremely fun discussion here on
Absolutely
Passive Income Podcast. And as always, I'd love to have you guys back again sometime.
Sure.
We're talking about doing another one in July when more people are available. So hopefully that'll happen. Another live stream.
I'd love to circle back around. That'd be fun. It always is.
Sure.
And Boomer, it's nice to actually chat with you too.
Yeah, hopefully I'll get my camera. I have no idea why my phone camera would not work on this app today. It's worked previously, but it is what it is.
Every time before, you've been on here 3 or 4 times now. So.
Yeah.
All right, thank you again so much for watching and joining in. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on any of the other platforms, hit the follow, and we will see you again next time.